Well, Yahoo! Here we are at on Guam Island, sitting in a Corsair, an F4U-1 Delta version. Been a long time in coming. Been really looking forward to this model, and I've been flying it, I guess, since it was released a couple of weeks ago, and it is just great. Um, so the first thing I did was I jumped on the on YouTube to see what uh, what was said about it. And there's a lot of training videos, which is great. And uh, so if you want to learn about this airplane, there's plenty of material out there. If you want to be lazy and just watch somebody else's video, or if you want to get into the manual and read a lot about it. And to be honest, I did both. And what I came away from that is that there's a lot of conflicting information out there. And so that's kind of what my video is about. I'm going to go through and give you my take on this whole mess of information. A lot of the conflict probably comes from preference because there is, there's not anything that's really set in stone when it comes to how you set things up for startup and for climb and cruise and descent and all that stuff. There are a couple of hard things, but most of the stuff is a little bit flexible depending on what you're actually trying to do. For example, if you want to do a kind of a long range climb or a rapid climb, or you want to go as fast as you can, or if you just want to go long range, there are different ways to set it up. And I'm going to kind of go through my take on a little bit of that. And so without any further ado, we're going to get right to it. I'm going to attack this cockpit like I do all cockpits, which is starting in the aft on the left side and work my way up the left console, over the left sub panel, across the instrument panel, down the right sub panel, and down the right console, setting up buttons, switches, levers, and knobs to the position that I want them for the startup. With having said that, let's take a look at the wings. Now, the wings are folded, and we're at a field, and that's probably not done very often because of maintenance and parts and wear and tear and just extra labor hours. Most squadrons did not fold their wings when on the beach. You had plenty of room, no reason to fold the wings, and you can cut down on all that maintenance and effort just by leaving them spread. And so that's what most squadrons did. Even Navy squadrons that were flying off for maybe an operation to work with the Marines probably did not fold their wings. And then they would just, if they did anything, it may be a one fold and spread just before they went back to the boat to make sure there was no obvious hydraulic leaks. But other than that, I imagine they didn't do much of that. So the fact that they are spread now is a conundrum. In any case, what we're going to do is spread them using hydraulics, even though we can spread them with gravity just by moving this handle. Well, actually, putting the lock handle down, moving this handle to spread. The wings will start to fall, but they'll get kind of hung up because of back pressure, and then you just use the manual hydraulic pump here to get them the rest of the way down, and then just relock the handle. That's one way to do it. We're not going to do it that way. I'm just going to hold off and do that once we get hydraulics on the airplane, and we'll just see how it goes. Now, these two candy cane looking levers are for the manual bomb release. They also drop tanks if they happen to be on those stations. This is a plunger that works the tail wheel lock mechanism. In the up position, the tail wheel is unlocked, and that's what we want here at the field because we're going to have to taxi out to the runway. Okay, now this particular trim is going to be 6 degrees right for directional rudder trim. Now the numbers you're going to hear me spiel out for certain things are the way the book says, and as you can see on this little label here, 6, 6, and 1. So 6 degrees right wing down for lateral or aileron trim, and 1 degree nose up or pitch trim for the elevator is what we want to set. We're also going to go to reserve on the fuel selector for takeoff and ground ops and for startup. And we're going to make sure the prop lever is all the way back and down which is in the full position, and we want that for start. We're going to crack the throttle a little bit, and we're also going to make sure the mixture is in the full cutoff position, in the aft position. Now the blower lever, our supercharger, is in the full or forward neutral position for startup. The landing gear handle is in the forward down position, which is sort of back asswards if you ask me. However, if you realize that it's also the dive brake, it kind of makes sense. Now these are the indicators for the landing gear, the tail wheel, the left and the right main, and the little grommet at the bottom is the indicator that indicates the gear are down. This is the rocket pickle switch, this little red button here, and it's associated with the settings that you put into the rocket box, and we'll talk about that later. This is the flap gauge, and it's in increments of 10 degrees from 0 to 50, and we're going to use 20 here at the field. We'd use 30 out at the boat, or more if we were really heavy, or there was very little wind, so we'd want to use more flaps in that case. Hiding behind the flap gauge is the igniters and the magnetos, and we're going to put that switch in both for startup. We don't have a drop tank, so this little rotary knob here we're not going to talk about today. This is the RPM gauge for the engine, the altimeter, and we're going to set 81 feet. And there's a point of discussion there too. Some people like to set it at 0 when they're on the ground, and that basically is above ground level altimetry. And I'm into the MSL mode, so I like to set field elevation to give me my altimeter setting, or if I set the altimeter setting, it should be close to the field elevation. Okay, this is the manifold gauge, and it's in inches. This is the airspeed indicator, knots. And here's our directional compass. This is our directional or navigation compass. I'm going to set that at about 283, 284 because I believe that's what the Fox Corbin is going to be today. And let's see what else here. This is our needle and ball. It's large and right in the center and big and prominent, and that's typical of this era of airplanes. A little less so in modern airplanes, even though these items are typically still there. This is the vertical speed indicator for climbs and descents. Here's our horizon line, artificial horizon gyro, and it's caged right now, and we'll leave it there until we get some power in the airplane before we uncage it. Obviously the clock. The two gauges that you're going to be monitoring quite a bit for engine care and feeding is the cylinder head temperature and the oil temperature gauge, which is part of this tri-gauge, which includes both fuel pressure and oil pressure. And down here, we've got 5 additional gauges. We've got a fuel gauge, which is currently at 0, and it's in gallons. And when we put on the battery, we'll get a true indication of how much fuel we actually have. This is a hydraulic gauge. This is our volt ammeter. Currently, it's reading ammeter. Of course, we don't have any power in the airplane, but the unbuttoned indication is ammeter, and with the button pushed in, it gives you volts. This is your G meter, and it should read 1 here sitting on the ground, 1G. This little indicator right here is for the oil cooler and the intercool mechanisms, and the up position is closed, the down position is open, and here again we have a conflict of competing sources. One source says they should be closed for all ground ops. Another one says that the oil cooler should be open 1/3 and the intercooler should be open 1/4. And I don't see that it's going to hurt anything, so I'm gonna go with that for this particular item. And I guess I would normally think that you'd want the cowls closed for the engine start because you want the engine to warm up. But another source says you should have the cowls open fully on the ground all the time. And I don't know where to fall on this. I'm going to open them just a crack, and then I'll open them more when we get to the runway, and that's kind of how I've come down on that divide. Okay, here we've got a, and obviously, well, and this is the start panel. It's got the battery, the fuel pump, and the primer. and a covered starter switch, which I'll uncover at the moment. Here's a bunch of light switches, which I'm not going to play with. We have defrost and pitot. Now, modern day airplanes, we basically turn the pitot heat just before we take the runway, turn it on, and then we turn it off once we clear the runway after the flight. And that's because the pitot heat warms up the pitot tube, and if you leave it on the ground, then you can maybe damage the probe itself. And so we typically don't leave it on, and it's also a danger to ground personnel as well. If they touch that thing when the heat's on, it can burn them. So typically, and of course, back in the day, back in the 40s, they probably left the pitot heat off even when they were flying, unless there was some reason to turn it on, like visible moisture or icing conditions. But on a warm day, you climb up, you're going to have to get up to some altitude before you get into icing conditions. And then even still, you have to have some kind of visible moisture before you really worry about it. But so the practice is to leave the pitot heat off. And so that's what I'm going to do for this flight, since it's going to be a clear day all the way out to the boat and we're not climbing very high. Okay, this is the instrument. This is all the oxygen related equipment. And since we're not going high, and because it's a sim, we're not going to bother with it. This is the IFF. These are radios, all of which are important, but I'm not going to use those today just because it's not really the focus of this video. Now, the arresting hook, we are going out to the boat for a landing, so we will talk a little bit about that, but I'll save that for when we're on our way to the boat. Okay, so I think we're kind of ready for the startup here. And I'll talk about the weapon stuff en route to the boat. Okay, here we go. So we got all this stuff set up. The trim is already in there. We got the magnetos on. We got the mixture fully rich. Idle cutoff. And let's see, we've got, I guess we're ready for the battery. Okay, so we'll turn the battery on and let's take a look at the oil quantity, or fuel quantity rather, and it goes right up to give us our true indication, which is full, a little over 200 pounds, or 200 gallons rather. Okay, and now the fuel pump, and we'll look at our fuel pressure gauge, and it comes up, and it's indicating something. This is not necessarily bad, even though this is the green arc down here. I think that's a good indication. Okay, now the primer for the F4U Corsair is anywhere from 5 to 15 seconds. And that's obviously dependent on environmental conditions. If it's real cold, you may want to hold it down longer. If it's real hot, you may not need it as much. So we're going to go somewhere in between because we got about 20 degrees out there centigrade. So 1 potato, 2 potato, 3 potato, 4 potato, 5 potato, 6 potato, 7 potato, 8 potato, 9 potato. Okay, so that's about halfway, maybe a little bit more than half. Okay, now the next thing is to do, I'm going to hit the starter. Looks like we've got some airplanes taking off, so the noise is going to be a little loud. So I'm basically going to hit the starter, and once the engine kicks over, I'm going to bring up the mixture lever. So I'm going to grab the mixture lever and ready to do that. Okay, so I'm going to hit the starter, and the engine should start rotating and eventually catch. And when it catches, I'm going to go to fully rich on the mixture, and bring the throttles up and hold the brakes and come up to somewhere between 800 and 1,000 RPMs. And let's take a look at the cylinder head. It's starting to come up, and the oil temperature is starting to come up almost to the green now. So everything is looking good so far. So let's just clean up, close that switch. We don't need that uncovered anymore. We don't need the lights. And let's go. It's time to unfold the wings. So I'm going to get the hinge pin out of the way, and then I'm going to move the lever towards spread. And hydraulics will push the wings to the spread position, and you'll see these little doors and this little red indicator, which is protruding above the wing. The doors will close, and then the red indicator will go flush with the wing. There they go. But the tone is still sounding, and that's because we haven't finished the locking procedure, which is pulling the handle up and twisting it. The sound goes out, and that means that the wings are fully locked in the spread position. It's worth noting this warning: wing fold handle must always be in the spread position during flight, and that's for obvious reasons. You want to have hydraulic pressure on the spread condition. Okay, let's see. I think we're about ready to taxi out there. We'll taxi out there and we'll do a couple other tests. What we can do is uncage the main gyro now. Okay, and I think we're good. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and take the brakes off, and we'll start taxiing. Okay, now in order to see down this taxiway highway, I mean, there are cars on this thing too, so we want to watch to make sure that there's no vehicles coming at us. Kind of looking, so we zigzag. Now the cars have the responsibility of getting out of our way. We are considered right of way, and so just in case some driver's got his head up his ass, I just want to keep watching to make sure that there's nobody coming. All right, we call that the gate to nowhere for obvious reasons, just kind of sitting out there in the middle of the field doing nothing. And off to the left here is our covered maintenance, which is kind of a new thing. About a month ago, we put those in, and the troops are really raving about it because now they don't have to jump on a really hot surface to do their work. It reduces the temperature about 20 degrees just having those covers over the airplane when they're doing the work. And that's our ensign latrine out there, that little green thing. And we call it that because when new ensigns arrive, we tell them that that's where they have to take a piss at. And then we sit around and watch to see who actually does it. Okay. All right. Boys will be boys, I guess. All right. Now, taking a look at the gunners here, we want to make sure we don't run them over. And coming up here on the left, just to the left of the little tower there is it looks like a back gate, but it's actually the main gate here. It's where everybody comes and goes to the tower when they go into town. Okay, and I'm of the variety of pilot that believes in the runway behind you theory, which basically states that any runway behind you is of absolutely no use to you. So I like to make use of every foot that I can of the runway. Okay, and I set 800 on the RPMs, and then hold the brakes. And let's see here. We got wings spread and locked, all the trim set. We got the mixture at fully rich, got the fuel selector in reserve, we got the flaps. We're going to set that at 20. So let's go to 20 on the flaps, and here's the little grommet that is the indicator. 1, that's 10, and there's 20. You can see that indicating 20 degrees. Making sure that our magnetos are in both. I'm going to bring up the engine to about 1500 RPMs. Okay, and I'm going to cut off the left igniter, and it drops about 20, maybe 25 RPMs. Max allowable is 100, so that's well within range. And as long as it recovers when I turn it back on, it's a good igniter. I'll do the same thing for the right. It drops about 20 to 25, and it goes back to both, and it recovers. So we got two good igniters, and that's good for that. The altimeter's already set in there. We've got, right now it's still warming up. It's not quite to the green arc, but it'll get there very quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and bring the throttle back to 800 until we're ready for start. And I'm also going to open the cowls to about 3/4 of their open, right about there. And just check the oil temperature, and it looks good. And I think we're set. We got those set properly. We got the lights we don't need. We got the hook that's up. And I think we're ready to go. So for takeoff, briefly, I'm going to start bringing up the throttle while holding the brakes. And as we get to 30 inches, I'm going to release the brakes and we'll start moving forward as I continue pushing the throttle forward. And I'll continue all the way to about 54 inches. While at the same time, as the airplane starts to move, I'll program some forward stick in there to get the tail wheel off the ground. And then we'll steer down the runway using the rudders. And we'll look for about 95 to 100 knots to lift off. And then we'll get the gear once we're clear of the ground. And then we'll get the flaps up about 120 knots. We'll get the first and then eventually the second detent. So we'll be clean. So that's basically the process. We want the canopy open, obviously, for takeoff. And okay, so I'm ready to go. So here we go. Let's hold the brakes until we go through 30, bringing the throttles up. There's 30, releasing the brakes and using the rudders, continuing to throttle, moving the stick forward. There's 54. And there's about 70 knots, using the rudders to stay down the center of the runway. There's 95, coming off, lifting off, getting the landing gear up, and they're going up. You can see the indicators moving up. And there's 115, lowering the nose just a little bit. There's about 120, and I'm going to go ahead and hit the first detent of flaps. And with each detent, you can see there's a little bit of a pitch up in the nose. I'll counter that with forward stick. And now we're a clean airplane, and I'm going to go ahead and relax my right foot to trim the rudder out. And also trim my ailerons. And I'm going to reach over my left shoulder, and I'm going to close the canopy. And I'm going to turn on course, which is about 330 degrees or so. And then I'm going to set up a climb here. There's 330 degrees, and just trim it up here so I don't wander too much in heading, which I do have a tendency to do. Okay, and I'm going to set 2550 on the prop. And I'm going to set 45 inches on the manifold. And I'm going to set lean, believe it or not, on the mixture. Okay, now again, there's people who like to stay at 2700 and rich for the climb, and you can do that. This is a little bit more gentle climb, a little bit more range oriented, and I want to set about 150 knots, which is the max range climb. So I'm a little fast right now, and you can change that based on wind direction and stuff. I think it's 1 knot for every 4 knots of headwind or something like that. Okay. And so we're going to climb up to 4,000 feet using these settings. And when I level off, the kind of cruise I want to do is basically maintaining the same settings, only using about 44 on the 44 inches on the manifold. Okay, 1,000 feet to go. And we're kind of looking for the boat out in front of us there. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about the resting hook. If I was in an F-18, I'd already have that hook down because we're feet wet and we're going directly to the boat. So I'd have that hook down. In this airplane, you can't do that because the hook is connected to the tail wheel. So the tail wheel has to be down before the hook can be lowered. So obviously that's going to happen in the landing pattern at the boat. So after the brake, turning downwind, dropping the gear, and then dropping the flaps, and then dropping the hook all at the same time. And also opening the canopy. So I've got to remember to do the open canopy. Okay, there's about 155. That's a good max range climb. Gives you, looks like somewhere between 500 and 1,000 feet of climb at this altitude. There's 400 feet, so I'm going to level off here. And I'm also going to turn on the gun sight, which is the switch right here. Okay, and this is the switch that changes the brightness or the dim. So I'm going to set it pretty dim. I don't want it to be intrusive. Okay, and now I'm also going to take a look at my VSI and the attitude on the where the horizon crosses through my gun sight, and try to figure out what is straight and level just by looking through the gun sight, which is right about there. And that's for this airspeed, which is about 180 knots. Now it will change with airspeed, i.e. angle of attack, and so you have to get used to maybe several settings. But it's kind of an indication of how fast you are, to be honest with you. You're going to be trimming the whole time. Still looking for the boat out there. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about the switches now. These switches over here are your gun switches, your gun camera, which is this one. Now, each wing has 3 guns, an inboard gun, an outboard gun, and a center gun. And these switches apply inboard, outboard, center. And these 2 knobs down here are your gun charging mechanisms. And there's one for the left guns and one for the right guns. So there's 2 of them. The bottom one is left, top one is right. And when you're ready to fire, you're going to go ahead and set those. And we'll go ahead and do that. Just set these things. Oops. And I think they're set. And now we're going to go ahead and turn on the guns, turn on the master arm, and pull the trigger. Okay, that works. So let's go ahead and save those. Save the master switch, and we'll just take the chargers off. Okay. All right. And we're still pretty close to 330 degrees, looking for the boat out there somewhere. I think we're getting clear. It is. There's the boat. So I am going to options. Take 10. Take 1. Take 3. Okay, the boat should turn into the wind now, if it's not already. Okay, let's see here. Boom, boom. Okay, let me finish with the discussion of the weapons. On the right side of the glare shield is the bomb panel, which is left left bomb, right bomb, and the center bomb. And this is the fusing tail and nose and tail. And then, of course, master arm, and then the pickle button is right here on the stick. So the gun has the trigger, the bombs have this pickle, and the rockets have this pickle. All right, I think that's pretty much, let me talk a little bit about the rocket panel here. This is the on-off switch. This is the safe arm switch, and this is the single and auto. Single and auto. Now, you in single, what you're actually shooting off is a pair. It's 1 rocket per wing. In auto, you're shooting off a series of pairs, 1/10 of a second apart. So that's your choice for firing rockets. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start a descent now. I guess I've kind of already started coming down. And so I'm going to set um, 2400 on the RPMs, which is my interpretation of what the book says. It gives you a range, but I'm gonna be at the top of the range because a lot of people would prefer to keep 2700 in there for landing, especially at the boat because it gives you that capability to go around. But 2400 gets me a little closer to that, and I'm just going to give it a try because it's just a little bit less responsive, and there's a lot of the nose just pitching around every time you move your throttle. So I'm hoping that that helps. It's kind of a work in progress, I'd say. So my prop goes to 2400. And my RPMs also a range, but in order to come down, I'm going to set about 25 on the 25 inches on the manifold. And I'm going to go to return the mixture to rich because pretty much everybody agrees that you want to be rich in the landing pattern. Also, again, for go around. So we're descending to 1,000 feet and we're almost there and we're coming up on the boat. And I know they are going through a launch and recovery cycle now. So we'll just see how well the launch is progressing. And there's 1,000 feet leveling off. And again, we're at a different airspeed, so we may have a different, actually we're at the same airspeed, 180 knots. So level should be pretty much what it was before. I just want to make sure my trim is set. Now, every time you put rudder trim in, it kind of moves the nose around. Every time you move your throttle, it moves the nose around. So you'll see that really increase in severity as we get slower and approach the back of the boat. So this is really an exercise in concentration to do this right. Now I'm going to circle the boat. It looks like they're ready for me. They've already moved all the non-launching airplanes to the bow. So I'm just going to fly over the boat and I'm going to head on down. It looks like maybe they just finished. That's one of the airplanes that just took off. So obviously they're pretty good at moving those airplanes forward. So I'm going to not wait. I'm just going to go start turning down here and then I'm going to commence. Nice looking boat. Okay, and instead of 800 feet at the initial, you want to be around 300 feet and about 150 knots. So that's why I've got my manifold back around 25 inches or so, trying to slow down and descend. And I don't need to go too far out because the ship's kind of waiting on me, and no one wants to keep the captain of the ship waiting. Now, once I roll wings level in the groove, I'm going to go ahead and open my canopy. I don't have to wait to get the gear down to get the canopy. Okay, and just added a bunch of power there to get back to 150 knots, but it's probably not all that important. Just have to be somewhere close to that. There's 300 feet and about 150 knots. And I am going to go ahead and open the canopy. And 300 feet and 150 knots looks pretty good. Trim, trim, trim. Nice looking boat. Everybody loves their ship. Mostly. When I was aboard the Kitty Hawk, it had a nickname of Shitty Kitty. Probably a relatively recent in terms of the Kitty Hawk's life, because it was a fairly old ship by the time I got onto it. And I'm going up a little bit further upwind than I normally would, just to emphasize a few things and have something to talk about. Okay, I'm going to start my turn downwind now. And right away, we're below gear speed, which is 200 knots. So I'm going to put the gear down, and I'm going to go all the way to 50 degrees on the flaps. And I've climbed a little bit here, so I don't want to do that. I want to work my way back down to maybe 200 feet, maybe 150 feet. And I want to get the hook down as well. Okay. Right about there. Now, balance, trim it out as much as you can. Continue your descent here. A little bit fast. And I'm going to start my turn. You always want to start your turn earlier than you would at a modern boat, because these airplanes are so much slower. And you want to come at it at an angle, because you've got this big nose in front of you. And the Corsair was famous for having a big nose in the way. In fact, they actually had to add a something in the seat mechanism to raise the seat so you could see over the nose. Now you can see that nose just jacking all over the place, and I'm a little bit high here, a little bit wrapped up, rolling out. Okay. Oh, we eventually caught it. I wasn't sure we were going to catch a wire there. Okay, let's go ahead and raise the gear. Raise the hook rather, and come over here and raise the wing. So we put down the hinge pin, and then we move the handle to fold. And you can see the little doors come up, the little red grommet that sticks above. And now I want to taxi and park on the nose here. I may have turned a little bit early, but I guess I was trying to emphasize that. And I'm using the airplanes in front of me as kind of a guide, and then just take a look at where that. And the other gouge I have for when to stop your move forward is when the wingtips in the airplane in front of you are at the just inside the center line there, right about there. And we'll just take a peek and see what it looks like. So it's pretty close. All right, so I'm going to set 800 on the RPMs, and I'm going to go ahead and hold the brakes. And the guys are chalking me now. Place the wheel chocks. I don't think they actually, it says they're in, but I'm not sure they are. We'll take a peek at that just to see. It doesn't show them, but I'm hoping that it's actually, they actually are in, but who knows. Okay, so my shutdown checklist is wing folds are up. I'm going to go ahead and pull that handle up to make sure they are fully folded, and I can put this in the neutral position. And then it says mixture idle cutoff. So I just take the mixture and do the idle cutoff, which stops the engine. The ignition switch, I want to go back to off. And the battery selector, excuse me, fuse selector, we can put that in off as well. And then the fuel pump, and if you'll see the pressure there, we'll turn that off, because it won't bleed off right away because there's just residual pressure. But if we watched it, it would slowly come down. And now the battery switch, you can see the fuel quantity indication. We'll turn that off, and it'll drop rapidly to 0. Okay, that's pretty much it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. You've probably seen some similar, maybe there's some differences, maybe not. Yeah, but maybe you got some other insight from some of the comments I made. Hopefully that helps, and I guess I'll see you in my next video. And please subscribe. I appreciate it.